It was that same dream again. The bride. Her hair cascading down her back, like a waterfall of golden silk, glistening under the soft rays of light that filtered through the trees. The flowers woven into her hair seemed to dance in the gentle breeze, emitting a soft sweet fragrance that filled the air with enchantment. It was a mix of honeysuckle and the wet earthy scent of the forest, and there was a strange comfort in the scent of her. Sean breathed it in deep, or was he just trying to catch his breath at her beauty? He didn't want the dream to end, like it had abruptly many times. The woman's beauty was indeed breathtaking, with her delicate features and sparkling emerald eyes that shone like stars in the sky. She wore a soft muslin bridal gown that clung like wisps to her curves, accentuating her graceful figure. It was the softest, loveliest dress Sean had ever seen. He couldn't help running his eyes slowly down the woman's slender frame, marveling at how the dress looked so simple yet so arrestingly beautiful on her. His eyes traveled all the way down to where 10 pretty little toes peeked out from under the dress and pressed into the bare grass. His barefoot forest bride. Just then her hands lifted to the flowers woven into her hair, as if to adjust them, and then he noticed her fingernails. Despite their elegant, French manicured appearance, he couldn't help but notice the traces of dirt lodged beneath her fingernails, as if she had spent the morning digging in the soil. Her pristine, well-manicured fingers and the dirt under her nails struck him as unusual and intriguing, as if there was more to her than what first met the eye. It was at this point that the image seemed to dissipate and Sean woke up. Oh no, he thought as he grabbed his phone, reality crashing down around him. 3 missed calls from Samantha. Samantha, his fiancée whom he was to wed in just a few weeks, filled him with a sense of trepidation. They had been sweethearts since high school, and for a time their love had felt pure and true. But now, after years of being together, he couldn't help but wonder if the name love still suited the feelings he had for her. Perhaps it was simply a sense of duty that was driving him forward towards their impending nuptials. Despite his reservations, he knew that marrying Samantha was the right thing to do, and the date had already been set. He could only hope that his doubts and fears would dissipate as she walked down the aisle towards him, and that he would once again feel the spark of love that had brought them together all those years ago. He groaned and rolled out of bed, ready to start the morning. The sun was shining brightly overhead, casting warm rays down upon the large expansive garden as Sean toiled away. He was humming a tune to himself, lost in his thoughts, wondering what his recurring dream had meant. A few feet away his buddy Michael was hard at work too, busy digging, planting, and weeding. Michael, his best friend in the world, was also his business partner. They had started their gardening business straight out of high school, and despite their surprise, it had grown into a success. Michael handled most of the administration and business end of things, while Sean had the green thumb, and loved working in the dirt and the soil. As he plunged his fingers into the flower bed, he couldn't help but think about the bride and her lovely dirt-stuffed fingernails. What had the dream meant? Was it his subconscious way of telling him he was unhappy with his future wife? Samantha could rub him the wrong way, probably more so with the stress of planning a wedding, and she was the complete opposite to the woman in his dream. She would never go for a dress that's simple, to start with, or just flowers in her hair. All her plans for the dress and the reception were burning a hole in his savings. Only the best jewelry and designer bridal gowns were acceptable for Samantha. Suddenly, Michael looks up from his work and calls out, "Hey Sean, I've been thinking about your bachelor party." Sean turns to face his friend, an embarrassed smile spreading across his face. "What have you got planned?" "Well, I was thinking we could go out to the lake and rent a boat, do some fishing, have a few drinks. Maybe even camp out overnight if we're feeling adventurous," Michael replied, his eyes sparkling with excitement. Sean grinned, liking the sound of Michael's plan. "That sounds awesome, man. I'm up for anything. Just then his phone started to go off. Damn, it was Samantha. Well, buddy, how does it feel to be a marked man? Michael chuckled as he took another swig of his beer, downing it quickly. He was on his sixth. Sean laughed. It had been a great night. They had set up camp, done some fishing, cooked up a feast with what they had caught and washed it all down with a truckload of beers. It feels like I'm marrying the woman of my dreams, Sean said, knowing he was lying. Maybe he did want to marry the girl in the forest. Michael laughs and reaches into his backpack and pulls out a small package wrapped in a cloth. I have one more surprise for the bachelor boy, he says and hands it over. Sean opens it, wondering what it could be. Inside the cloth are 2 bite-sized pieces of mushroom. They are a rich deep brown with bright orange flecks. Shrooms. Sean laughs. Not just any shrooms, these will expand your mind and let you live your innermost desires, says Michael, with his own matching laugh, and with that he reaches over, and plucks up one of the 2 pieces, and without waiting pops it into his mouth. Go on, princess, down the hatch. He laughs, and stretches out on the grass. Sean shrugs to himself and swallows the other shroom. There she is again. Beautiful and radiant. Her golden hair shimmering in the soft light of the forest. This time it feels different, the feelings are multiplied 100 times, he can see every strand of her golden hair, every tiny detail of her soft porcelain skin. It's like she's right there before me, he thinks. He can smell her scent, soft, earthy and sweet. Like flowers, freshly cut grass, and the warm loving earth. He doesn't want this to end, not this time. He feels his arm rise upwards slowly to touch her. But as it rises in front of his eyes, it is somehow different, long and slender, delicate with white glossy tips. His fingernails are a pretty glossy shade of white, it's a French manicure, and under his fingernails there's still a little dirt from picking out the flowers for his hair. The hand now flies to her lips in shock, covering the pretty face and lush pink lips. She's me. Realization dawning on Sean. I am the bride. She feels faint with happiness. There is a sensation of butterflies in her stomach, as she looks at her reflection in the full-length mirror. She feels beautiful, she feels blissful, she will be marrying the man of her dreams, and tonight, she will give herself to him completely. This is the wedding I have always dreamt of. It will be the happiest day of her life. The sun was shining happily in the sky, casting dappled rays of light through the trees and onto the forest floor. Birds chirped merrily in the distance, adding to the serene atmosphere of the forest clearing. It was the perfect setting for a beautiful wedding, and that's exactly what was about to happen. A rustic wooden archway had been set up at one end of the clearing, adorned with wildflowers and greenery. Guests had taken their seats on either side of an aisle that had been created by placing moss-covered logs in a row. The aisle was sprinkled with delicate flower petals, adding a pop of color to the natural surroundings. As she stepped towards the little gathering, her bare feet kissing the grass softly, a hush fell over the crowd. Heads were turning to take in the breathtaking sight of the bride, her skin glowing with heat, her green eyes shining as she stared down the aisle and locked eyes with her groom. Michael, she whispered. Michael stood at the end of the aisle, watching her with a look of love on his face. A single violin started to play softly. It was time to be the bride. As she walked down the aisle, her steps were light and graceful, her feet barely touching the petals that lay scattered at her feet. The groom stood waiting beneath the arch, his eyes fixed on her, as hers were on his, their hearts pounding with anticipation in each other's chests. When the bride reached the groom, they took each other's hands, and the ceremony began. The vows were spoken in hushed tones, the rings exchanged with trembling fingers. And then, with a kiss, they were declared husband and wife. do you take Michael to be your? I do forever. She whispered, cutting short the celebrant in her haste to be one with her man. It was hours later. The sun had finally settled for the day and left the moonlight to take over. All the guests had finally left, leaving the new couple alone in their forest. The groom lifted his new bride into his arms, carrying her through the forest towards a secluded clearing. The bride clung to her man, her bare toes peeking out under her beautiful white gown as it trailed behind them in the night. The trees gave way to a carpet of soft green grass, and in the center of the clearing, bathed in moonlight, a blanket had been laid out, surrounded by candles in jars and vases of wildflowers. The groom gently placed his bride on the blanket, and as they settled in, he lit the candles one by one, filling the clearing with a warm, flickering light. The scent of the candles mingled with the fragrance of the flowers, creating a heady atmosphere that enveloped the couple. At the center of the blanket, a large rug had been spread out, covered in delicate petals in shades of pink and white. The petals felt soft and velvety underfoot, and the couple sank down onto the rug, surrounded by dozens of plush pillows in every color of the rainbow. The groom leaned in to kiss his bride, and as they embraced, the candles flickered and danced around them, casting a romantic glow over the clearing. The soft rustle of leaves and the chirping of birds provided a gentle background soundtrack, and the couple felt as though they were the only two people in the world. Hours later, as she looked up at him with love in her eyes, her toes pointed up to the moon, she cried out in joy, "I love you, Michael." He awakes with a start, still repeating the words out loud, over and over. Michael is staring down at him, shocked and worried but with a strange look of contentment on his face. Sean sits up too embarrassed, and overwhelmed with the sensation of what he just went through. The shrooms had opened up a part of his mind he had kept hidden away for so long. They stare at each other and finally Sean whispers, "I can't get married to Samantha." Michael nods and wraps his arms around Sean once more. He whispers in his ear, "I know, sweetheart, you belong to me now."